Hey everybody, Mike here. So I finally got my hands on a Rectangle Starlink user terminal, or Dishy. I'm going to unbox it and see what it looks like on the inside. Before I start with that, I just want to give you an idea of what I'm looking for. So this is my Gen 1 Starlink user terminal. So this was the very first user terminal released by SpaceX. As you can see, I stripped off all of the plastic backing. I removed the motors and the pole, and I added on this magnet mounting frame. I did another video where I actually attached this to the roof of my car and drove around to test mobility. Take a look at that video if you haven't seen it already. The link to these magnets is down in the description, as well as in the original video. The cool thing was this actually works. Driving down the highway, 80 miles per hour, 130 kilometers per hour. This is pretty rock solid on the roof. And I think most exciting is that the signal is pretty rock solid. Even turning, going around turns, banking on the highway, this signal is bang on. So I'm going to do more testing with this, but because this is a Generation 1 round dish, which were the ones with the black pole. Now this doesn't have a pole, but I actually have the pole back here. So this is the black user terminal, or the user terminal with the black pole. And one of the downsides of that is actually that one uses a lot of power. It hasn't been able to take full advantage of the power saving updates that SpaceX has been releasing. In addition, most new user terminals, at least in North America, are the rectangle user terminals. So long term, what I want to do is build something similar to this, designed for a car or camping, which is, you know, another big advantage of this is it's lighter. So something similar to this, but made out of the rectangle dish. So that's my motivation. Now let's open it up. There have been a lot of updates to this user terminal versus the old one, but one of the things I want to highlight while I've got the box here is look at the size difference between these two packaged units. So this is almost twice as tall, way bigger, way harder to ship than this unit down here. So huge savings for SpaceX, for shipping, maybe you'd say for FedEx, but wow, that's a much smaller package unit. All right, let's take a look. So an unboxing, I've got my official fancy knife, Benchmade Bug Out Mini. This wasn't sent to me. I had to pay full price. If anyone wants to send me cool knives, feel free. All right, let's open her up. So I have not actually opened this before. So you're seeing it for the first time at the same time I am. Okay, so nicely packaged. Still got the same kind of plastic vacuum molded pieces like before. And then the dish nicely packed. 4-legged tripod instead of 3. Little standoffs. And then the dish itself. If you can still call it a dish. Clearly it's a flat panel and it's not even round, but the nickname Dishy seems to have stuck. One of the main differences, and one of the things that I'm really looking forward to for camping man portable, is that this is much lighter. Even with the pole and the motors, I think it's lighter than this unit, even without the magnets and the aluminum on it. This round dish is pretty heavy. But this one is nice and light. All right, and we got the same sort of icon-y guide, just pictures. And then here we go. I think one of the most striking parts of this unit is the base station power supply with a glass front with the orbit, the transition orbit between Earth and Mars. And there's the plugs on the bottom. So one of the biggest criticisms of the Rectangle Starlink unit that I've seen is also this power supply rotor. Because the power supply is built into the Wi-Fi rotor, you have to use this unit unless you hack something together yourself. And the point of frustration is that this unit doesn't have an Ethernet port. There's no kind of LAN port for you to plug in your computer. You can only connect via Wi-Fi, or you can actually buy a separate little dongle that goes between the Starlink dish and the router. It's an extra little kind of pigtail dongle. So it goes between those two parts and provides a hardwired Ethernet port. But you have to buy that separately, and there's a huge lead time on there with reports of people waiting up to 5 weeks. Another criticism for at least early adopters is this connector. So this is not a standard Ethernet connector like the original round dish units had. The connector kind of looks like a mini HDMI port. It appears to be proprietary, not nearly as simple as the standard Ethernet jack. Another big difference with that is kind of fixing one of the criticisms of the first unit is that the Ethernet connector going into the Starlink dish unit here, this is now also removable with that same waterproof connector. So I'm going to try to remove that here. Yeah. So this also unplugs. So that's a really good improvement in my mind, because now you can replace the cable. This comes with a 75-foot cable, but you can buy 150 feet from the Starlink store to completely replace this. And because it just plugs in and out, you can do that without any special tools. So if you remember way back, I was the first person to do a teardown of the round dish. And at the time, I had no idea what was behind the white plastic. So I actually took a very cautious approach that involved completely destroying the white plastic that was on the back of this actual unit. After seeing the inside, it became clear that you could actually remove the white plastic by prying with enough force through the side here to get the white plastic off these little black studs here to expose this metal backplate, which is pretty low profile, except my magnets. But I didn't really want to take a destructive approach to this unit because I do want it to be fully functional. And because it's actually, let's say, generation 3, it doesn't look like it's quite as modular. It's not designed to have this case removed. And this joint, while it might be possible to remove, doesn't look like it's going to be as easy as it was, or now we know is, on the round one. So in a sense, I didn't want to be the trailblazer tearing this apart. But thankfully, gravity gave me some help. So somebody actually had one of the rectangle dishes and they dropped it. It fell off their roof, I believe. And an enterprising Facebook user actually purchased the broken unit from the person who dropped it and did a more complete teardown. So what I'm going to do is actually take a look at those pictures now to get an idea of what's inside here before I do any kind of teardown on this physical unit. Before I take a look at that teardown, let me know in the comments what you want to do with your dish, and if you have a mobile use case, so mounting it on a moving vehicle and want to try to use this rectangle dish. Or if, like me, you want to take it camping or something like that, I'd love to get an idea of where you're trying to go and what you're going to do with high-speed, low-latency internet when you get there. So let me know down in the comments, and subscribe while you're down there. Hit the bell to get notified of my new videos as they come up. Okay, now let's take a look at that teardown. So apparently this dish started with Leanne Buckley in the Starlink Facebook group. It looks like it got dropped off the roof of the house and yeah, kind of got disassembled by gravity. Another Facebook user, OJ Wilkes, purchased the whole unit from Leanne, and OJ Wilkes is the actual one who pulled it apart and took these detailed photos I'm going to show you now. So you can see this picture is what it looked like when it was all repackaged when OJ Wilkes received it. And I'll try to show progressive levels of disassembly. So first you can see the inside of the backing panel. There's not a lot in there as expected, really just the motor units. Of particular interest to me here, it looks like the gray plastic seems to actually be glued or welded onto the white plastic. That actually does not bode well for trying to pull these apart cleanly, but let's carry on looking. This is just a close-up of the kind of motor unit and the pole mount. I should mention I've linked down below directly to this post. You have to be a member of the Starlink Hacks group so you can request access, but you'll be able to access all of the original photos directly from OJ Wilkes' post there. And then really I think the most interesting bit is the entire PCB, the rectangle PCB, the full view. And you can see on the end, kind of at the bottom, all of the bigger and individual components. So the power supply and Ethernet magnetics on the left, and the CPU, RAM, and flash on the right. And then it looks like most of the rest of the board is really made up out of those signal chips and the smaller units dotted around the phase shifters. And that's the evolution you can kind of see from generation 1 to 2 to 3, reducing the number of components on the board and just generally being smaller overall. Then he also captured a close-up of the field, those small phase shifting ICs, and it's neat seeing the curved traces on the PCB. Usually curved traces like that are, it's a controlled impedance trace, where they actually need the length of each trace to be a very specific amount, usually related to the wavelength of the signal that's being sent down it, which makes sense for these traces. They need to know exactly how long the signal takes to get from the chip generating the signal down to the smaller chips, and that needs to be the same across the entire field. So that's why you see these curved traces with sometimes little zigzags to get into these. So really interesting engineering there. And then the other side, completely smooth. This is actually the radiating elements of the phased panel. And if you look at a close-up there, it's just a smooth PCB. And underneath the green layer, the solder mask, that's where the actual shaped radiating elements are. And then layered on top of that smooth, flat PCB is this sandwich of components that forms the rest of the radiating elements, with just a white layer on top to give it that white finish. So it's not completely clear how all of these pieces are all held together when the dish is assembled. I reached out to OJ Wilkes to see if I could get some more information, but I didn't hear back in time for this video. But as I do my own teardown, I'm going to be trying to, again, preserve the radiating element, make sure that the signal or the entire unit can still be used as the phased array. But I want to do that while trying to maintain the flatness of the overall system. This unit doesn't have the metal backplate with those rigid metal studs like the round dishes do. So I'll need to find some other way of kind of attaching to this to give it a positive mounting on a car or just a waterproof mount for camping. So my biggest fear based on those photos is how I'm going to separate the gray plastic there from the white backing. From the photos, it looks like those are actually glued together along the edge there. They're not perfectly aligned, so I can probably get something in there to apply a bit of force. But I think what I might end up doing is actually stepping back a bit and saving some of the white surrounding plastic and just removing it maybe a centimeter or half an inch up from the surface. And then that might give me a positive area where I could glue a flat piece of plexiglass or Lexan to give me a waterproof backing, but get rid of all this bulk back here and the weight of the mounting stand. So I'm going to take it out and test it to make sure it actually works before I do any actual destructive disassembly. If you want to see kind of next steps as I work this project forward, definitely subscribe down below, hit the bell so you get notified of new videos as soon as they come out. And really, I want to try to get this one in that low power mode into a low profile dish, just like I did with the round one. So I'm looking forward to testing that in a vehicle and also camping. All right, thank you everyone very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Cheers. One big advantage, which is the main thing that I'm interested in, is it is much lighter. Even with the pole mounted, I think it's lighter than this dish. Oops.